Good afternoon from Paris, and a Happy New Year to all of you. Welcome to the launch of the OECD's Global Relations Programme in Taxation for 2016. I'm Richard Parry. I'm the Head of Global Relations in the Centre for Tax Policy and Administration in OECD, and I'm responsible for the development and the delivery of our Global Relations Programme. First of all, let me just say thank you very much for getting up either early in the morning or else staying up late at night for tuning in to this webinar, and I really hope you find it useful. Perhaps I can start by saying that this discussion is about the management of the Global Relations Programme events themselves, and those are open to government officials only. So if you aren't a tax official, this may not be of much interest to you, and we suggest that you log off. Apologies for those of you who are in that category, and thanks very much. So, let's begin. The purpose of today's event is to launch the 2016 Global Relations Programme. And it's also to explain the nature and operation of our new knowledge sharing platform for improving communications, which includes registration and the processing of our events themselves, as well as, very significantly, the sharing of information for participants, between participants within the program itself. I'm going to talk about the Global Relations Programme and introduce that, and then I'll pass over to our Canadian colleagues led by Guylaine Robert, who will introduce the knowledge sharing platform, and then we'll show a short training video to give you an indication of how this knowledge sharing platform will work for you. These presentations and the training video will be available on our website early next week for you to watch again if you've missed some of it, or indeed to provide a chance for your colleagues to access to get some idea of how the program itself will work in 2016. Of course, we very much welcome your questions during this discussion. To submit these, please use the chat name, which is currently on the slides, OECD GRP. And we'll stop the questions after each stage of this discussion. So we'll stop after the Global Relations Programme introduction, and then after the knowledge sharing platform introduction and the training video. So you'll have an opportunity for anything that occurs to you. And of course, please do contact me and my team after this event with any questions that you might have which you haven't had a chance to have answered. Okay, so let's start there. What's the purpose of this presentation? I think it's really just to give you an outline of the Global Relations Programme itself, to provide those of you who aren't very familiar with it, with the objectives, indication of the stakeholders and their involvement, the governance of the programme, how it works, how it fits together, who makes the decisions, the kinds of challenges that it faces at the moment, and particularly, of course, the challenge with regard to BEPS, the strategy which we've developed for 2016, and to give you a very quick breakdown of the shape of the program for 2016. And the program itself you will find already on our website. I'll give you an overview of how the program works and where we are for 2016, and as I suggested, I'll then pass over to Canada to talk about the knowledge sharing platform. So what are the objectives of the Global Relations Programme? Well, as you can see from the screen, essentially there are four main objectives. Sharing, first of all, sharing knowledge and experience between tax officials, mainly within the same regions, and we often and always find that regions have specificities of their own and particular information which is useful for solving problems within those regions. Secondly, building an ongoing dialogue between officials so that we don't stop in the context of the event itself, but we build a dialogue beyond the event, and I think the knowledge sharing platform will be a very important feature towards doing that. Thirdly, improving the capacity, building capacity of tax officials to enable them to work more effectively with regard to domestic resource mobilization in their own countries. And fourthly, to implement global standards and guidelines for in particular areas, in international taxation in particular, such as transfer pricing, and also, by the same token, the other side of the coin, to feed non-OECD tax perspectives into the development of those standards itself. itself. So we have not only standards which are created in the OECD context, but standards which have global input and global validity. So let's have a look. What do we do with regard to the Global Relations Programme? What's it about specifically? Well, normally, most years, we run up to 70 events a year. We'll be running slightly less in 2016, around 60. And indeed, that's slightly more than we ran in 2015. And this is all to do with BEPS, and we'll say a word or two a bit more about that in a minute. The events are demand-driven, very importantly. Demand-driven in a number of ways, both in the context of topics and where we hold them, how we hold them, and so on, and who's involved in them. They're in partnership with the regions, including, very importantly, the regional tax organizations, and they're based on the needs and the interests of those particular regions. The program is a very big one. It involves around 2,000 tax officials every year from around 100 countries. So we see this as a very important cutting-edge program. It's there to build essentially a global community of tax officials, and that's its main strength. It's an international collaboration, bringing together officials with common needs and direct expertise on issues. And that's the important part, is that this isn't a training program as such, although, of course, everybody will learn from it. This is a program which allows people to share expertise that they already have and to help resolve common problems. The other important point about this is that it's a collaborative program in the sense that everybody pays their own costs. Participants pay their costs of travel to attend the events. Host countries pay the local costs and the costs of the venues. The costs of experts are paid by countries who provide those experts, who help facilitate the events. And of course, OECD pays its own management and facilitation costs for developing the program, leading events, and so on. So I need to say a few words, first of all, to thank our stakeholders for their involvement in the program and for making sure that it happens. Here we really have kind of three main categories of stakeholders in this: donors, and you'll see some of our donors represented on the slide, host countries, and you'll see the list of countries which host our events, our multilateral tax centers for 2015 on the left, and other host countries on the right. And finally, the countries who provide experts for our events, who help facilitate the actual delivery of the events themselves. As you'll see, a significant number of countries there, I think around 30 countries in total, members of OECD, but also countries which are not members of OECD. So, as I've suggested, it's a collaborative and a global partnership. Thanks again to all those countries who've provided input into the program and who've given it the strength that it has. We're very grateful in particular, of course, to the individuals involved in this. First of all, the experts for their own huge contributions to this work. The success of their program really depends on their ability to communicate, to pass on their knowledge, to engage with participants, and we find that uniformly they do an excellent job in this process, and they really are the rock which the success of the program is built on. I'd also like to thank those of you who are country representatives and who are responsible for ensuring that your country's officials engage in and attend those events, and that your country is able to benefit from those events, from the skills, information and knowledge which your officers bring back from the events. Again, you play a really core role in ensuring the program works, and I'd just like to thank you for the work you do there. So let's have a look at the shape of the program itself. Then, first of all, how did we do? How did we do in 2015? These numbers come out of a survey from the Canadian Revenue Agency, which runs an independent evaluation service which helps evaluate the Global Relations Programme. And I'd like to thank Canada and the IES in particular for the excellent work that we do here. It's again critical to the program itself and to its usefulness to know how effective it actually is. What we've got on the screen here is an indication of the impact of the Global Relations Programme. Just to say that 9 out of 10, or approximately 9 out of 10 participants in the events were able to apply their knowledge in daily work, successfully shared their knowledge internally, and I think this is a really important aspect of this, is the ability of participants to come back into their home administrations and to share information and indicate and provide a wider discussion and debate within that home administration itself. And finally, 100% of supervisors of those participants saw the program as a worthwhile investment. In other words, felt they got some benefit from the program, even though their participants were absent out of the office for a week or so, participating in the event. For us, that's the real measure of how well we've done. The figure of 100% may be perhaps a little higher than we might anticipate, but nonetheless, we think we've done a reasonably good job in this respect, and we think the program works and flies and is pretty successful. There's always room for improvement, though, and I think it's important that we keep thinking about how we improve this. And one of the ways, of course, is through the use of the knowledge sharing platform, which we'll come on to. But we also welcome your comments at any time. And one of the reasons for having this webinar is to establish personal engagement with you all, so we can ensure that where you do have comments and you wish to engage on the program, we can talk to you about it. So let's have a look at the governance then, the structure of the program and decision making. The Global Relations Programme essentially reflects the mandate of the OEC's Committee on Fiscal Affairs to support countries in developing their capacity in tax areas. The program is developed annually by the Secretariat, but on the basis of demand and supply and demand from the various stakeholders involved in the program itself. So it's an attempt to establish what's needed out there, who's able to provide resources out there to meet that need, and our job is to facilitate that process and design a program which actually reflects those particular needs. It's then approved by the advisory group for cooperation with partner economies. We'll say a word or two about that in a second, and reported to the Committee on Fiscal Affairs. The only real rule behind all of this, I guess, is that as we always know, that demand outstrips supply. And so our real constant battle is to find sufficient resources from wherever we can to ensure that we can deliver what's expected and requested of us. So please bear with us in that context. We're always looking to try and meet your needs, but resources are always a constant constraint. So let's have a word about again, more specifically the governance aspect of, but particularly the advisory group for cooperation with partner economies. The advisory group is our kind of, what in OECD speak, our working party. It's the group of countries who are responsible for directing and managing what we do. Of course, the Secretariat is always responsible to the countries, the OECD member countries, and the other partner countries working with it. So we're there simply to implement what the advisory group would like us to do. The membership of the advisory group is open to all stakeholders, so OECD countries, non-OECD countries. Any countries who are interested in the program and actively involved are welcome to take part. It's also, of course, open to regional tax organizations. And we have a very strong connection and linkage with the key regional tax organizations, with ATAF in Africa, CIAT in Latin America, IOTA in Europe, SAGATA in Asia, CRADAF among Francophone tax officials, and indeed the other regional tax organizations as well. In essence, the regions are critical to be able to establish what is needed, what is required by countries. And they're also an excellent way of bringing together perspectives from the regions in how to resolve and deal with particular issues which may have a global impact. The role of the advisory group itself is to advise the Committee on Fiscal Affairs on topics and the focus of the Global Relations Programme, and it does this on an annual basis. The management, delivery and future direction of the program, how we run it, how we deliver it, and where we want to go next. And indeed to provide views from outside the OECD and perspectives on OECD work in the area of taxation, and particularly, of course, on international taxation in the context of BEPS. We hold an annual meeting, and we have regular conference calls as well, linking key stakeholders to discuss where we are with regard to the delivery of the program and related issues. So where are we with regard to the program for 2016? What are the major challenges facing us? Well, I've focused in on BEPS as the critical challenge, and I'm sure you all know what BEPS is: base erosion and profit shifting. And BEPS really is a challenge in two ways. BEPS is a challenge on a sort of institutional level, because BEPS has provided something of a paradox. It means that because of the amount of work going on with regard to the base erosion and profit shifting work, both within countries and within the OECD, it means that resourcing for the program is less than it might otherwise have been for the Global Relations Programme itself. And at the same time, and the paradox is, of course, that because of the work that's going on with regard to BEPS, the demand is much greater. The demand for this kind of engagement, for multilateral dialogue around these issues, and for finding practical and operational solutions is much higher than it might have been were we not talking about BEPS in the first place. BEPS has made international tax more significant, more political. It's on everybody's agenda, and therefore the demand for our work has increased. BEPS, as you know, I'm sure, was a two-year project to tackle tax avoidance specifically. That avoidance was costed out as somewhere between 100 and 240 billion US dollars. It required global input in order to achieve agreed and consensual solutions on this. And with 2 years of intensive dialogue, it was delivered on time at the end of 2015. Quite an achievement, of course. But we now have discovered that that's the easy bit. BEPS is sorted out in terms of a framework, a structure, a set of standards, a set of best practices, but now it's about what the Secretary General at the OECD calls implementation, implementation, implementation. We need to find a way of implementing the BEPS solutions through changing international guidelines and models, such as the Model Tax Convention, but also through domestic legislation and changes that countries themselves need to make through domestic legislation and practices in a whole range of areas to do with BEPS solutions. There's a need for, in the context of that, global inclusiveness, involving countries on a global basis in the monitoring process of how BEPS solutions are implemented, what happens, who implements them, in what way. And of course, particularly for capacity building, and that's where I think the Global Relations Programme is most significant, in the context of how to build capacity to ensure that BEPS solutions can be implemented institutionally, and the capacity can be developed so that the tax officials in those countries are able to ensure that the treasuries gain the benefits of the BEPS work. You won't be surprised as a result of all of that to know that the BEPS work and issues lie at the heart of the Global Relations Programme for 2016. So, okay, BEPS is obviously critical. What's the difference between the way BEPS is perceived from the perspective of OECD countries and developing countries? There's a lot to be said on this topic, but I'd just like to focus briefly on a couple of quick points about the distinction between developing countries and OECD countries and the specific challenges which developing countries face. First of all, developing countries have a greater reliance on corporate income taxes. As we know, the proportion of developing countries' overall revenue tends to be higher from CIT than from other sources, and certainly higher as a proportion than it is in OECD countries. This means greater vulnerability to tax planning, and of course the problem of capacity in dealing with tax planning increases that level of vulnerability. Second, there is a question of how to enact effective legislation to tackle BEPS. And here the problem is all about how to ensure that you can have an institutional structure and to get political support for putting in place that institutional structure. Within the OECD context, there is, and the G20 context, because BEPS is a G20 OECD project, there is already that political support. In the context of developing countries, that support has to be developed, influenced, and actually act to implement this. Thirdly, developing countries need sufficient information to risk assess and audit the context of BEPS work, and here developing countries need to be involved in the various initiatives with regard to exchange of information. And finally, it's critical, as I've suggested, to build capacity for individuals in order to implement what are relatively complex rules within the tax environment. And again, the Global Relations Programme, we hope, will help build that capacity. Okay, so that kind of gives you some idea of what are likely to be the pillars of the global relations strategy itself. First of all, developing country input through country representatives, through our regional work with the various regional tax organizations that I've mentioned, some of whom have set up technical groups to look at the impact of cross-border transactions and to develop collective approaches. All of those are critical to establishing what we really need. And we've designed at the moment a program with a series of topics which we will deliver. We're always looking to refine those and make sure those meet exactly what the needs are. And we refine them before the events, and of course we refine them within the event itself, as the event leaders are able to be flexible to actually make sure that they can react to the kinds of issues that have been raised in the context of the events themselves. The ultimate aim, of course, for all of this is to strengthen countries' abilities to access information, build institutional and human capacity to tackle these issues. And the Global Relations Programme in sharing experience is a key element of that. Again, capacity building must fit into the environment and the context that we're talking about. It must be responsive, and indeed it must lead the demand for capacity itself. It must establish what is required. It must be flexible, efficient, so we need to create synergies across various mechanisms. The Global Relations Programme is simply one specific part of a much broader toolkit of ways in which capacity can be built and developed. It needs to be global. We need to engage globally, as in the BEPS project, to ensure that global results can be achieved. And finally, it needs to be supportive of the monitoring process, because the monitoring process is itself a learning and capacity building process. So having said all of that and given you some broad context, let's move to the program itself for 2016. Here, the details of the topics, locations and dates are on our website, so I won't go through the details of that now. But I just wanted to provide an indication of the range of work that we're doing. Obviously, it's primarily focused around international tax work. That's probably the key work area in the OECD's Committee on Fiscal Affairs. But secondly, it's also critical given the BEPS project. But it also covers other areas, and we also cover areas like how to make good domestic direct and indirect tax policy. In other words, VAT and broad tax policy, what the best way is for designing tax systems and how to implement them. How to improve tax administration and how to reach the holy grail of improving voluntary compliance, particularly with regard to increasing the taxpayer base of the informal sector. But also at the other end of the spectrum, how to deal with large corporates and how to deal with high net worth individuals. We also look at areas such as joined up approaches to tax evasion and to money laundering. So as you can see, it's a pretty wide-ranging list of topics. Each event is an event on its own. So while it may have issues and discussions in common with others, each event will be specific to the regional context and to the group of the people involved. So what are the next steps with regard to the Global Relations Programme for 2016? First of all, The events list are available on the website, as we mentioned, and I mentioned it again, simply to say that they are occasionally subject to changes. We try as much as possible to make sure that we don't change our program, but inevitably there are reasons out of our control, which means that does occasionally have to happen. So please keep an eye on that list, and we will certainly indicate to you if you're involved in any of the events that might change with regard to dates and so on. We will let you know about that. Secondly, we've written already to countries who provide experts to help facilitate the events, asking for particular experts to be provided, and we're engaging in a dialogue with that to ensure that we have the right experts in the right places. And again, thank you very much to those countries for their involvement. We're about now to issue event invitations, and we encourage country representatives to begin the registration process as soon as possible. We have some guidelines for country representatives, for experts, as well as for participants, which talk about things like selection of participants and so on, which are on our website. We'd encourage you to look at those. The events themselves are, as I've mentioned through this, aimed at creating a regional dialogue and focus for that reason on a regional basis. So we'll prioritize registration from within the regions with regard to participation at that event. And of course, that also makes sure that all countries get a fair opportunity to attend the events. But this is a global program. We're aware of that, and we'll also try and accommodate countries which want to be involved in a particular topic or work area in centres beyond regions where space is available. We'll try and be flexible. And this is part of really what we mean by demand, the fact that our events are demand-driven. We'll try and be flexible, not only in the content of the events themselves, but in the ability of countries to actually take part in and engage in those events. Just a couple of very recent things to end up with. First of all, some recent highlights. To report that we now have memoranda of understanding signed to deliver programs with the South African Revenue Service, with the African Tax Administration Forum, and we have a new MOU with China around overall cooperation. And equally significantly, perhaps more significantly, we have a new multilateral tax center based on an MOU signed with the SAT in China in December. We're very pleased to announce that, and we think that will help develop our capacity to be able to involve countries in our work. So we're really looking to working with China and with other countries with regard to the Yangtze Center. Finally, the knowledge sharing platform you'll now hear a lot more about. Just a quick word of introduction to it. First of all, we will be an early adopter, I think it's called, on the knowledge sharing platform. We'll use this as the operational engine for the Global Relations Programme for 2016. It'll be a management tool for registration and the delivery of events. It also provide a database for accessing information. And we'll provide a platform for the development of an ongoing discussion group or discussion groups based on the global relations events themselves. I think this is a really exciting development. I think this enables us to use, perhaps a little belatedly, the technology to serve the Global Relations Programme as it should. And I'd particularly like to thank the Canadian Revenue Agency and particularly Guylaine Robert and her team for all their efforts and commitment over the last year to making this exciting prospect a reality. Before I pass on to Guylaine, I'd welcome the chance to answer any questions. Okay, thanks. We have a couple of questions. First of all, how are candidates selected for the events, and what are their responsibilities following global relations events? Well, I think this kind of builds a little bit on what I've said already. It's a very important point. As I've suggested, there are guidelines for country representatives on the website itself on how to how to select participants, and indeed how to select experts for these events. These are really based around the extent, the kind of experience that's needed by participants and by experts, and the kind of process that might go on in this. We generally suggest that country representatives run an open process for deciding on candidates based on the candidate's experience, based on the need and the particular circumstances in country as a whole. We suggest that as part of this process, candidates commit to cascading information they receive on their return. And we think this is a good practice, not only for participants at the events, but also for experts themselves who attend as experts and facilitate the events. Everybody learns something from these. In fact, often the people that are facilitating the events learn as much, if not more, than the participants themselves. So, but it would be a good thing, I think, to have cascading built into the overall shape of this. And we have just one more question, I think. I want to attend an event, but I don't know who my country representative is. That's a very good question. We have on our website an updated list of country representatives, listed per country, and their contact details. So if you want to attend an event, please check our website, look for your country representative, and contact them directly. We updated it in December. We hope that it is as accurate, or indeed as accurate as we can be. We know this changes all the time, and we would very much like to ask country representatives, where possible, to let us know when they change and when other representatives come in. I think that's possibly all we have in terms of questions for now. So perhaps I could hand over to our colleagues in Canada. Thank you very much for listening to me patiently over the last half an hour or so, and we look forward to the presentation on the knowledge sharing platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. Happy New Year, everybody. It's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce the knowledge sharing platform to you today. And the knowledge sharing platform, as Richard mentioned, is a prototype that was developed in Canada to really explore how technology could be used to support knowledge sharing activities. So over the next few minutes, I will provide you with a brief overview of the platform and some of its main features. Oh, I'm sorry, the presentation is coming? Yes. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Here we are. Okay, so what is the KSP? And, you know, as its name implies, it's a global online tool which was designed to promote the sharing of tax knowledge and expertise among tax administrations. Really, it's a place for tax administrations and organizations to come together to harness our collective capacity. That's the basic idea behind the knowledge sharing platform. The purpose of the knowledge sharing platform is, and the idea behind it is quite simple. It's really about increasing our collective access to reference and training material. It's about improving visibility, coordination and management of events, and also about increasing our opportunities through technology for ongoing support and deepening our engagement in that particular space. The knowledge sharing platform is built on a hub-based model, and really this is the backbone of the application. It is really about one tool with a common functionality, but it allows countries and organizations to come onto the platform through the hub system and have autonomy over their own content. And I think that's a very important piece of this platform, and that's what brings the collective aspect to the knowledge sharing. The hub-based model will allow users, as they navigate the platform, to know exactly where the content is coming from. And it also provides a mechanism for the user to navigate content, so they can navigate content within the application, either as a collective tool, but also to really own into particular type of content that they are looking for. So, over the next few minutes, what I'll try to do is walk you through so that you have an idea of what the application looks like. This is not an actual training session of the KSP. There will be a video later on, but just to familiarize yourselves with what the knowledge platform actually looks like. And really, the platform is built around three main areas of features. And I would also like to point out that within the application itself, there are tutorials, and you will see those and where you can find these tutorials during the next session. But generally, the application has three main kind of areas, and you will probably note that they link back to the initial purpose of what I was presenting earlier. But in essence, it has an area that contains training material. So in that space, you can find some e-learning tools, but also a library of reference materials. It has an element of, the second component is really around events and event management, and this is where specifically in the early days where the Global Relations Program is really going to leverage the platform to help and leverage the KSP in that context. And the third area is around communities of practice. Personally, I think this is an area that is very exciting, because this is really about providing some collaborative space where we can look at technology to allow us to keep in contact with each other. I know, particularly in the context of the Global Relations Program or any training events, that what people are often looking for when they go back home is say, okay, now I'm back home, but I have some more questions. So I think this is an area that offers a great opportunity as we look forward and try to look at the potential of technology to assist us with building our collective capacity. So maybe if I may just very quickly, what I will do over the next few minutes is just dive a little bit deeper in each of these three elements of the platform. And just as an example, I will just show you very quickly, if you were to go into the training material area, select library where you would find reference material, then what you will see on the platform is a structure on the left side, and that's what's circled here. And what we did in terms of building the structure for the KSP is we really used the building blocks for effective tax administration. And I think this is where it will give us a common kind of navigation for the platform, so that we thought it was really important to take the time to really build something that would speak to most people. So this is really how the platform is built throughout. Whenever you're looking for content, when you're looking for discussion forums, they would be organized in the same way. And in this particular context, and this is where I feel a little bit limited at the moment, because I get very excited about the platform, but if you were, for example, to click on international tax, you would have a few topics, but it would ultimately take you to documents such as, and I've used an example here just to illustrate the point. So there is a document within the platform that's called Transfer Pricing, a Canadian Perspective, and this is a document that highlights, how Canada is structured in the context of transfer pricing and some of the rules and legislations that we apply, which is certainly, from a Canadian perspective, is something that we get a lot of, that people are interested in finding out. But what I was referring to earlier when I talked about the hub model, you can see that this is something that was developed developed by Canada because you would always recognize the identifier and know where that information is coming from. So this is just an example of the type of content that you may find on the knowledge sharing platform. And fair warning, as you start logging onto the platform over the next few days, there is currently not a lot of material in the library section, but I can assure you, based on the conversation I'm having and some of the other work that we're doing, that over the next little while we're going to see a lot of content starting to arrive in that area of the platform. So now, if I may take a few moments to just walk you through very quickly the advanced section, and this is probably one that certainly the users and the people that are particularly interested in what's happening in the Global Relations Program. We have a calendar section, and if you were to click on the calendar, you would find that you would have access to all of the events that are planned, over the next while, and people can go there and really look to see at what is available. Now again, a bit limited because this is a PowerPoint presentation, but to just illustrate the point, if we were to click on one of these events, and if I was a user and I was looking to see, okay, what's happening, and oh, this looks interesting, and I clicked on it, what you have is some information about the event itself. It provides you with a description. It tells you when it's going to take place, where it's going to be hosted. It also gives you information about who the target audience is for that particular event. And over time, as the events become active, you're going to start seeing, for those who are registered for a particular event, some documents and that are going to be all provided through that particular feature. The third and last kind of main feature of the platform is the community of practice. I mentioned this a little earlier on, just to show you very quickly in practice what this looks like. It has two main features within it. One is where we will be able to have discussion forums, as Richard mentioned during his presentation. We think this is an area of great potential, where after an event we could have ongoing and targeted discussions to assist people as they return back to their administration. But more broadly, in the context of the global tax community, this is an area where countries could sponsor discussions on any topics of interest, and people could come together and real-time interact with each other. There's another feature there, which is the webinar feature, and this is where we will be able to host and also maintain webinar information, because this is always, I think, interesting once we have a webinar and the webinar as opposed to the conference, where multiple people can see it after the event has actually occurred. So I think this is a good feature of the application. Again, you will see that under the community of practice, you will recognize the structure of the application. And maybe just a word is that as we started work on the knowledge sharing platform, we realized that once you bring a global community together on topics that are as vast as topics related to tax administration, the content can become very big very quickly. So our capacity to organize it and to bring some common navigation to it was really, really important. So a discussion forum will look like a very typical discussion forum for those of you who are using social technologies. This is where you would have a particular topic or a question posed to people, and then people would be able to comment on what is happening. And then finally, just very quickly to show you what we meant by webinars, and we used examples where about a year ago, Canada did a couple of webinars with CIAT for their conference in Kenya, and so why not make these available to the broader community, and we have uploaded these webinars here, but over time, again, this is a place where we're going to be able to organize them, but also to provide access to the more to as many people as we can on the knowledge sharing platform. One neat feature, and again, there are many of them, and as I mentioned earlier, there is a tutorial within the application, so I cannot, unfortunately, go into each of them within the confines of time that we have ahead of us, but one neat feature of the knowledge sharing platform that I wanted to highlight for you today is the briefcase feature. And really, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to catch up with myself here. The briefcase feature is it will allow users to personalize their experience on the knowledge sharing platform. Again, you know, when we think about the communities that are going to be consumers and users of the knowledge sharing platform, we all have very different features, very different interests. Through the briefcase, users will be able to, for example, bookmark any particular content, so they are able to say, hey, I'm a transfer pricing specialist, so anytime something comes on that has that as a topic, I would like to be, one, notified, but then I can bookmark these key documents and throw them in my briefcase. This is also a space that as I go to events, and you saw the event piece earlier, where you'll be able to, as opposed to having to navigate through the event piece, that once you're registered, you can manage all of your events and all the pieces directly through your briefcase. You will have access to tools to provide evaluations and surveys, as Richard mentioned. This is a very important component of the work we do. We always seek to improve the process, and evaluations and surveys are very important tools to allow us to achieve that. You will be able to bookmark your communities of practice and have access to help and support. So this, in a nutshell, and again, it's a very kind of high-level overview, is what the knowledge sharing platform at a high level looks like. From a global relations program perspective, you know, how does the knowledge sharing platform could look like in practice? If we were to think about attending an event, well, we think that there's something that happens before the event, and so here people, you know, have access to online learning, reference materials, and toolkits. They may or may not be directly related to the event, but this is a space where, you know, if they know that they're going to be attending an event, I don't know, on transfer pricing, and they know that it's going to be Canadian expert, well, if you think about the material we had earlier on, this is a place where, you know, people can go ahead of an event and they could look through material. As for the event itself, which is really where today comes in, it all starts with the registration process, and you have seen when I was discussing the calendar of events, what kind of this will look like. But here, if you look at it a bit more closely, and I'm not sure how you're seeing that on your screen at the moment, but you can see where, you know, the users will have access to the material, the experts will be connected through the application, so it's going to be real-time updating of material. It will eliminate the need for multiple emails with versioning control, because everybody will be managing the event and the content of the event in one space. And then, you know, beyond the event and past the event, you know, we are very diligent in asking participants to complete evaluation forms, so the application allows us to now bring that online. And then, as Richard was mentioning, you know, as we think forward with the program, you know, what potential does technology afford us in terms of staying connected beyond an event, and maybe kind of taking our conversation a little bit further once we are all back in our tax administration. So I will conclude my presentation here by showing you, because this is the key here, how to register for the knowledge sharing platform, and I encourage you to do that after the session. So the link to register is on this page, so it's www.ksp/pa.org. And once you go on the application, you will be asked to fill out some information, and after you submit your registration, you will receive an automated email that will ask you to confirm email address. This is an important security feature of the application, although this is not, we will not be holding big state secrets in this. There is still some security aspect that needs to be preserved so that we manage the access to the application. Once your email address has been confirmed, the KSP administrator will grant you access. So I just wanted to say that to warn you as you register that it's not just, registering and all of a sudden you're in. There's going to be an additional step where you're going to be asked to validate your email. I also want to maybe point out that to be a participant on the knowledge sharing platform, as you registered, you will be asked to agree to the terms and conditions of use. I strongly encourage you to look at these. It's important because the knowledge sharing platform, it is not intended to be a space where we would come and discuss secure information. This is not the space for this. This is really about improving our collective capacity to share knowledge. So I will stop here. And perhaps invite a few questions as we move to the next section. And Richard, I will let you continue to be the master of ceremony, but I will ask Mark to see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Guylaine. We have received a couple of questions. We have one from a panelist regarding the e-learning function of the KSP. The question is about the management of e-learning, and specifically whether it's managed unilaterally by the KSP team or whether it's more interactive and other users can add e-learning materials. Also, they are asking whether e-learning comprises PowerPoint slides or videos of lectures uploaded or other types of media.
Oh, that's a very good question, and thank you for asking it. I think there's a couple of elements of answers to that question. One that I believe links to governance, which I will briefly address here. So the knowledge sharing platform is a global online tool, and the governance of it is also going to be something that we're going to look at to manage as a collectively. So people will be able to bring online tools to it, and over time, I think our hope is at the outset is to make those tools available, but in the longer term is to look at how, in looking at the collection of tools we have, how we could improve the quality and delivery of these online tools. Perhaps we'll come across one that is a great tool, but then how do we kind of bring that together in terms of having one or two or three tools that will be helpful for people. So the short answer is that on the one hand, people are able to provide online tools to it, and we know there's a lot that exists out there. But two is that over time, as we collectively manage this platform, and there will be an editorial board that will support the evolution of the KSP, we can start looking for opportunities to really bring some e-learning kind of strategy to the platform itself. Is there another question?
Great, thanks. Yes, we have received one other comment / question, and I think maybe the best way to deal with it, Guylaine, might be for you to give a quick overview of how potential participants can go about registering for an event, including the preliminary step of registering for the system itself. And I think the second part of that question is, in terms of people registering for the system and for specific events, how will that be managed? Who's responsible for managing the list of users?
Okay. So let me just, so in terms of registering for an event, and I believe I have my my colleagues here to help me out. So in order to I'm sorry, it's just because it was a long question. I'm sorry, Mark. Sorry,
well,
everybody.
In fact, I think you've already covered the initial registration process. So maybe I can just point out that in order to register for any event, yes, users must initially register for the KSP.
Yes.
And then if you could please go over the process of registering for the event itself, I guess.
So they go on it's the country that we're going to register users to.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So in order to register for an event, it is the country representative that is responsible to do this, but the users will have to register to the KSP, as Mark outlined. But we are following the process of the Global Relations Programme, which requires country reps to actually register users. And maybe I'm not the biggest expert on the details of the program. So Richard, feel free to jump in if you want to add something to this, or Mark.
Allow me to. I'm going to add that after this presentation, there's going to be a training video for country representatives that is going to cover all the elements, how to register to an event and how to register participants. So every detail is going to be on this video, and then after, if you're going to have questions by any means, you can also contact us. And because it's very technical, we're going to provide you with all the inputs that you need to register the participants to the event.
Okay. Well, I apologize for my lack of for this of answer. Hopefully, we have answered it to a level that's satisfactory. And as Angela mentioned, I think the next part will go a long way to answer that particular question. Is there?
Yeah, and Guylaine, if I may, we've received just one other question. It's from one of the panelists from China, and specifically it concerns events that they would host at their multilateral tax center, where most, or if not all, of the participants would be from China, and they're just asking about the process of registering, whether all participants would have to be registered. I wonder actually if it might be easiest to follow up with the Chinese panelists afterwards, just because this is a bit of a unique situation.
It is. I think it is, but at the same time, I would just say that the intent behind this, beyond the registration, because the registration is one step in the process, but since the idea is to manage the event itself within the application, so that's how users are going to get access. The registration process is an essential one in that it will kind of bring that community into that space to be able to access the information and be able to interact both in person at the event, but also electronically. There are the documents and the post events and all of that stuff. So I think, instinctively the answers to that would be yes, but I agree with you, Mark. We can certainly take that conversation offline as well after. Is that fair? Yes?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Guylaine. Yeah, thank you to China for that. Yes, can I suggest that we do that? We're about to have a discussion with China actually in the next few days, specifically with regard to participation in events in the new China Center. And we'll talk in detail, I think, about exactly how we go about this. And we'll obviously share that discussion with Canada and the KSP as well, so you know where we are on that. But I think this is something which is quite lengthy, and we'll need to go into some detail on it. So for now, I think perhaps if we see how the training video, if it's possible to run that, I think that might provide some answers to some of the very interesting issues that you've raised. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for this, Richard. So I I think that perhaps, because the questions are starting to get into some of the technical details of this, and I think the next session is going to show people really how the registration process works, what a country representative will be looking at as they start working through the knowledge sharing platform. So perhaps this is a good place to move to that part of the session, and then take follow-up questions after. Is that okay, Richard?
Yes, Gilad, thanks. That sounds great.
Thank you. We'll put it on.
Welcome to Country Representative Training for the Knowledge Sharing Platform. The Knowledge Sharing Platform, or KSP, provides an online tool to promote knowledge sharing among tax administrations. As a country representative, you can use the KSP to view upcoming learning
Thank you very much. Very informative and useful. First of all, are there any questions or points arising out of that? Remembering that we will make sure that that material is available on the website, so you can look at it again. And of course, we'll be happy to talk about some of the details as necessary. But first of all, are there any questions on that, on the KSP itself and its operation? We'll talk to particular countries about their own specific cases as we go through the next few weeks. But if there are any general points that someone would like to raise, I will turn to my Canadian colleagues to provide some of the responses to this. Although, of course, if anybody would like to talk about the Global Relations Programme, I'd be very happy to talk about that. Any questions? None on the OECD side. Any on Canada's side? No.
Richard, I have one. And the question is, if I have a problem accessing the KSP website or registering a delegate for an event, who should I contact, the OECD or the KSP team? So if there is a technical problem with the KSP, you should contact the KSP team. As it was indicated in the video, you can contact us at info@ksp-ta.org, and a contact link is also available on the KSP registration page. And certainly, as we mentioned earlier, we are in prototype mode. So our hours of operations are 7 to 5 Eastern Time, and Monday to Friday. But we will aim to resolve any issues as they occur and answer any questions as quickly as we can.
Great, thanks, Ghislaine. And yes, just to add, I mean, if the question involves the substance of the event or the location or details of the event itself, as opposed to the registration process, you're always welcome to contact our contact point, which is ctp.globalrelations, one word, @oecd.org. I think that's correct. And that's also on the presentation, isn't it? It's on the Global Relations presentation, which will be on the website as well. Okay, no more questions on this side. Nothing more on your side, I presume?
Maybe a final one, Richard. This is when I register as a KSP user, or when KSP users register, should they use their official work email address, or can they use a personal email address such as Gmail or Yahoo? And I think the answer to that is that it is highly recommended to register using your official work email address. The application itself recognizes official work emails from tax administrations and international tax organizations as being from trusted domains. So therefore, it is only necessary for a user to verify their email address in order to be registered, making this a very quick process. This is what I was referring to earlier. When you register, if you use it, I apologize. If you do it using your work email, you will receive an email asking you to confirm, and then that's it. So, but it is possible to register using a personal email address. The only thing is, as an administrator, we will want to ascertain that the person registering is a tax official. So we will need to go back to the administration to make that confirmation.
Thanks very much, Gilad. Yes, just to say that's our view of this as well. But we are aware, of course, that there are a number of restrictions sometimes on work emails, and sometimes it's possible that in order to receive the level of information needed, you may need to use a private email address. But ideally, work emails are the best strategy. Perhaps I can stop there if we're dealt with the issues arising, and I'd really like to just wrap this up by, first of all, thanking the two teams on Canada's side, the Canadian Revenue Agency, to to Ghislaine, Angela, and Mark, who you can see on the screen, and Katie as well, who've been very heavily involved in the development of this extremely exciting initiative. I think this is going to revolutionize what is already, we think, a relatively revolutionary program. I think this will take it into spaces where it hasn't been before, and I think it will deepen its impact in a way which we still don't quite we haven't quite established yet. But I know it's exciting. I know it's important that it will certainly take us a great distance forward in the next few years. I'd like to thank on the OECD side as well, Ubaldo and his team, and Conjuro, also Philippe and Adrian in particular, and Yves, who've been responsible for working on the KSP on our side, on the Global Relations Programme, and for helping to put this event together. So thank you to everybody who's been involved in the processing of all of this, of putting this event together. I think given the astonishing technology involved, and perhaps that just shows my age, but given the technology involved, I think we've managed to have a pretty successful product here. And I'd like to say that we'd like to have this kind of event on a regular basis, given that this KSP is a new initiative and that effectively it's taking the Global Relations Programme into a new dimension. I think what we'd like to do is to try and run another webinar of this kind, updating you all as to how it's worked in practice for the first 6 months. What we're looking to do to improve it, and where we go from here. So we will set up another event of this kind in July, and we'd like to say please join us. But finally, I'd just like to say thank you to all of you who've registered for and taken part in this webinar. Thank you for your questions, which have been very pertinent and useful and allowed us to clarify some of the very important issues. This event has been, I think, a very significant one, and thank you again for giving up your time and engaging with us in this event, and of course in the Global Relations Programme and the knowledge sharing platform itself. So thanks to all of you. It's going to be an exciting year. We'll be in touch, and we'll be in touch soon. And if you have any other questions which you'd like to ask, either on the KSP or the Global Relations Programme, please do contact us at the contact points we mentioned earlier. Thanks to everybody. Good afternoon.
Thank you.